Hey, everybody, welcome to Teach a Kid to Read. As always, I'm Tony. And today I am here with a brand new friend of mine who I'm just getting to know. Her name is Anna Paul. Anna, thank you for coming on Teach a Kid to Read. How are you today?
I am doing great, and thank you so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, we are so excited to hear about the work that you're doing in Clark County in Southwest Washington around literacy. But before we get into that, tell us just a little bit about you.
Okay, well, I am not originally from the Pacific Northwest. I'm originally from California. And quick background on me, I'm a Marine Corps veteran. I was in the Marines for 5 years as a intelligence analyst, and then I did about 3 tours over in Iraq during the war.
Wow,
Um,
thank you.
And then after that, I worked for the Boys and Girls Club as their volunteer coordinator. I really, really enjoyed working with children. And so um, at the time, I was also getting my master's degree. And then I got married and I had kids, and I kind of took a break from the workforce. And once my kids got a little bit older, I was able to volunteer in the schools, and that led to substituting in the schools.
Hmm.
Um, and then from there, I was presented this opportunity to be a volunteer coordinator for Read Northwest, which was a brand new organization um, that kind of is in surrounds itself with uh, reading, being a reading buddy, getting volunteers to be reading buddies with students in the schools here in Clark County.
I'm a little nervous that I'm talking louder than you. So
Okay.
I'm going to try and talk down just a little bit more. And why don't you try and talk up just a little bit so we make sure everyone can hear every word. And I don't sound like a big obnoxious bully, which I don't want to sound like one. Um, so the reason I'm so excited that you're here is, teach a kid to read. We work all over the United States. We go into these cities, and inevitably, cities have like a literacy organization where they're like, we exist to send volunteers into local schools to be reading buddies. And they are like, help us get more volunteers because we don't have enough. And then there's your story where in the city of Vancouver, Washington, and the surrounding area, pretty big area, there was
Yes.
no literacy organization that was sending, where if somebody wanted to, like, I want to help an under resourced kid, I'd like to sign up 1 hour of my week to be a reading buddy,
Mhm.
there was nobody they could call. Is that what I'm understanding of the situation? That's why I want to hear about this so much.
Correct. So there was nothing citywide as far as an organization that provided this for the schools. There may have been smaller organizations or something
Right.
just localized per school. But as far as an organization that our purpose is to have these volunteer coordinators go out and get volunteers in the community, train those volunteers, and then work with the schools to try and pair them up with buddies. And then these volunteers, they just meet with their buddy once a week for about 30 minutes. And it's just been very rewarding for all the parties involved, seeing the volunteers get so excited to see their buddies, and then their buddies getting so excited to see their volunteers. And
I
so
love all that. Is the reason that there hasn't been like a regional organization is just because, like, Clark County is doing great and all the kids are reading really wonderfully, so we don't really need an organization with reading buddies. Was that the situation? I'm guessing the situation was actually very different than that.
from what I understand, that when COVID happened, it kind of put a halt to everything, especially with volunteers coming into the schools, being able to do that. And so there was a group of business leaders that kind of came up with this idea and said, yes, let's do this. And then they needed somebody to kind of be the boots on the ground. Um, and that's kind of where I came in last January, um, and kind of started up the organization. So we basically had a logo and a mission statement, and everything else from there had to be created, had to be built up.
So your website is readnw.org, correct?
Yeah.
So I just went on your website because I wanted to learn more about you before we got on. And I found out that 21 of 52 elementary schools are to have Title I status. And then I learned that 45% of third graders in your area, where your organization, 45% are not reading at grade level. And more than 3,500 children need reading support currently in Southwest Washington, where you work. Does that all that sound accurate?
Yes. And then each school is different, and so you can go on to the OSPI website and look up each school's kind of their report card and get those statistics per school. But many of these Title I schools are below 50% at reading level for third grade and above. And so that's where we come in, and we are wanting to provide that extra support.
Right.
And it's at no cost to the schools, and they don't have to
I love that.
provide a school employee to manage and train these volunteers. That's what we're here for, is to get those volunteers in there and work with the schools.
I love it. So I want to get to the volunteers in a second, but before we go to the volunteers, tell me about, so like in Oregon, we have a big organization called SMART, and it's like
Yeah.
it's been around forever and it has tons of funding and everybody knows about it. And you go on the local PBS station and there'll be commercials about sign up for this. And there's a feeling like it's been around forever and it's got a lot of community support. Up in Washington, you sort of had to start from scratch. There wasn't this like momentum. Have you felt supported by the area, by local people? What's the sensation been like as you've been trying to get this organization on? Have you felt very alone, or have you felt pretty connected and supported?
No, I believe there's a lot of support, even all the way from superintendents to in school districts to district office staff, to business leaders in the community. Um, we definitely get a lot of support, and from we've just been operating for just over a year now.
Wow.
And last year, whenever we started in March. So we only had a couple months of the school year last year, but we had 2 pilot schools. And at each of those schools, we had 14 volunteers. That has grown to 12 different locations now, to include the Boys and Girls Clubs, and up to 117 volunteers. And as we're recording this, we're still growing. We're still getting volunteers and training volunteers currently. So those numbers just keep going up.
So a year ago, a little over a year ago, 2 pilot programs that had never been done before. They were pilot programs in 2 locations. Each one had 14 volunteers. And
Yeah.
now you're in 12 locations. And did you say 100 and how many?
117 volunteers.
117 volunteers.
Yes, so
So
that's
500% growth, 500% growth in a year, basically.
I think it's about, well, if you were going to do a percentage, it's about 350%. But I would, the number, it just keeps growing. We're needing to add on additional staff to manage these areas. So
right.
Mhm.
what are you hearing from the volunteers? What's the experience like for the volunteers who go into the school and become the new best friend to an under-resourced kid?
It's been very rewarding for the volunteers.
I love that.
They enjoy going and seeing their buddy and being able to help them, even if it's just small baby steps. But whenever they get to experience and see uh, a light bulb go off in their reading buddy, it's just very rewarding for them to be
Mhm.
able to be a part of that experience.
It's great. I've been a reading buddy, so I can attest. Uh, what so it's the story's just getting started, and it's a great start. What do you guys dream about? What do you as you think about the future in Southwest Washington, what do you guys dream about with Read Northwest?
Well, I believe that we dream to be in every elementary school in Clark County.
How many
Our dream.
how many schools is that?
62,
62.
I believe.
That's a good dream.
62. Yes.
And um how are you getting to these volunteers? How are people finding you and suddenly discovering that they can help be a part of changing a school and changing a child's life? And how are they finding you? And then just give me a little bit of like the setup, like what, let's say there's somebody listening to this right now who's in
Okay.
Southwest Washington. How might they
Mhm.
find you? And how have people been finding you? And then what would it look like for them to get on board?
Okay. They can go to our website, www.readnw.org, and there's a link on there to volunteer, and you would fill out a volunteer application, and then that information gets sent to um, our different volunteer coordinators that have a different area of responsibility, and then one of those volunteer coordinators would contact you with any information that you needed.
That's great.
Mhm.
And that sounds easy. And it sounds like you have the capacity to grow and you have the dream of being bigger. And I can just imagine the photo album that you're collecting in your mind of these little faces and these, run of the mill average adults who are just like, I'm willing to volunteer, and they're connecting and finding these beautiful stories and transformation. I think it's great. And I really, really want to thank you for what you're doing.
All right, yeah, thank you. It's very rewarding to see all this transpire.
I love it. So what we're going to do is for those that are listening on YouTube, there's actually just a short kind of video of the story of Read Northwest. So we're going to add on to the end of this podcast. So you can watch that if you want to. If you're listening online, thanks for being here. That is Anna Paul right there. And she's telling us all about Read Northwest, readnw.org. Go check it out. And if you are in the Southwest Washington area and you want to help, if you want to connect and become the new best friend to a kid, please, please go check them out. This is Teach a Kid to Read. And Anna, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
A magical thing is happening in Southwest Washington. It's magical because of the unpredictable threads that have come together to start something beautiful. Many communities have a reading program, but somehow here in Southwest Washington, we do not. Nothing citywide, nothing comprehensive. How is that possible? But more than half the children in our community need reading support. Failing to help these children is not an option. In Clark County, 21 of 62 grade schools have Title I status. 3,500 school children currently cannot read at grade level. Children in poverty who are not reading proficiently are 19 times more likely to drop out than their middle-class classmates. If any area needed an extracurricular reading program, it seems it would be Southwest Washington. And that is where the magic is happening. All the pieces have coalesced to start a grassroots reading program. The schools, the educators, politicians, organizations, churches, and all funded by local business leaders. But there is only one thing we lack: you.
I feel like sometimes it's the one thing I do for the week that's really beneficial. You feel good about yourself and you feel like you're giving something back.
You just build up this love for these kids, and they're like, you know, your own kids.
It's so fun to see when they do start reading. I mean, they're just excited. They can't wait till the next time, you know.
They love having somebody just be with them, focused only on them, to read for 20 minutes. Any one of us can do that.
The structure is in place. Thousands of books have been distributed, and reading buddy projects in our public schools have been successfully tested. Now, all we need are more volunteers. Will you be a reading mentor? Statistics suggest if you want to keep a child out of prison in the future, teach them to read. Want to keep a child off of welfare and unemployment in the future? Teach them to read. Want to build self-esteem and self-worth for a child's brighter future? Teach them to read. Read Northwest is a Vancouver-based community-led organization that exists to help the children of Southwest Washington. Together we are fighting to build a brighter future. Will you come with us?
I feel like it's a breath of fresh air for the kid in the day, and it's definitely just a magical little moment for me.